Hello and welcome to Conscious TV. My name is Ian McNay and our guest today is Mooji. Hi Mooji.
Hi.
And we do respond a lot on Conscious TV to emails we get in and letters from people saying we'd really like to see you interview so and so and so and so. And Mooji has come up frequently over the last few months, so we finally tracked him down. He's now back in England for a time, and we think we're very lucky to have you here in the studio with us, Mooji.
Oh, thank you.
So you have a book out, Before I Am, which is, I think, just been released. And I haven't actually met you before. I've had a little look at your book the last few evenings. And I'd like to start, if we can, by just looking a little bit about your life and how you got to be where you are now, I guess. So I know you originally came from Jamaica. And then when you were 15, you moved to England.
Yeah, 16.
16, yeah.
16, yeah.
So what was the reason you moved to England?
Well, my mother had been living in England all the life I had before. I did not really know her. I had not any memory of her, of any experience with her. She left when I was very young.
Right.
So I met her only when I was 16.
Right.
And went to join her after my father died. Somehow she came back into the focus, and we began to write each other. And she mentioned, I would like you to come and live with me in England. And it was very exciting, you see, the idea of leaving Jamaica.
Because England's such a different country, a different culture, isn't it?
Yes. Many people, particularly from the place where I'm from in Jamaica, Port Antonio, tend to come to England for some reason. I don't know why. Others go to more to America, But in my part of Jamaica, they seem to head out to England.
Right.
I don't know what the connection is there, you see.
And you came from a big family?
Quite big family, yes.
Yeah. So when you got to England, what were your impressions to start with?
Well, the first time I came to England, the first time ever flying, I came with my mother. But we entered the country, we arrived in Heathrow. I had not the entry permit stamp, but we were very naive. We didn't know anything about it. So in fact, we separated at the airport, and I was held back. And I was held in a detention center for one night. And back on the plane next day to Jamaica.
They sent you back? Really?
Yes.
Gosh.
It's been a good experience for me.
Yeah.
I have to say this because since then, when we travel, wherever I go, I never just automatically assume I will get in. And there is a sort of humility in that, You never. Sometimes I see people in the queues, almost sort of tapping their feet in a new country, like what's taking so long and so on. But there was always this feeling that maybe I won't even get in. You see.
But you also learnt from the experience too.
Yes.
Yes, it had a value there.
I feel so.
And what kind of work did you do originally when you got to England?
Well, I went to school and college for a bit. And it was an easier landing for me because my mother belongs to a church community. And so I felt like they cushioned my way in a bit. You were surrounded by a lot of people who wanted to see you and to take you out and to take care of you. So I felt really fortunate from that point, Always made friends very quickly. Within a week or two, there were already people, there were new pals, It was very easy.
Yeah, so you felt accepted somehow.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Not immediately on the first time. The second time in.
Yeah.
Yes. When I'd met the group from the church and the community and so on, it was a lot easier.
And you felt at home in the church?
Yeah. Yes.
So
more because of they're very much a very social culture there, and the warmth, and people are very open, very friendly, very approachable, and yes.
But did you believe in God as such?
I would say almost everyone who were brought up in Jamaica believe in God at some place within themselves. It was a very easy. Even this question, do you believe in God, is not common in Jamaica. It's almost an assumption that you do.
So
You
it's
see?
it's part of the ingrained culture that
Yes, it
you
is
believe in
part,
God. Yeah.
I don't feel it is necessarily hammered into us. We just grew up with that. There was a church. The church we attended was just behind my house, so it just felt it's part of the part of our yard, you know.
And then I think I was reading your biography that 32 years old, you had an encounter with a Christian mystic, and then something significant happened and changed the way you see things.
Yes, I refer to him as a mystic. He doesn't refer to himself as this, you know. I say mystic because, in fact, he was a young man, you know, and he had just. It appeared that he just came. I came home one day. We were just about setting up an exhibition, an art exhibition, a new exhibition, and I returned home, and my friend said, "Look, you know, somebody came today and saw some stained glass. Had some stained glass in the front door that had made, and wanted to know who made it." And she said, "Well, my partner made it." And I said, "Oh, I'd like to meet him because I also make glass." He said, "You know." So that was the way in which he was introduced to me. And then she told him, "Look, come back later. You'll be here." And then he did come, and I met him. And there was an immediate, let me say, I felt immediately comfortable with him, you know. He very straight, within 15 minutes of meeting, we talked a bit about the art, and I explained to him what we were doing. And he seemed to want to make me aware that he was attending this church. And this church was just in the house where we lived, in fact. And it was just a meeting of young people who were worshiping together in his room, you know. And it felt like that was important for him to tell me somehow. But it didn't get in the way of anything. I really enjoyed meeting him, and the way that we're used to people calling. And if you live in Brixton, you know, you're used to people knocking on your door.
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses, people like this, you get, you know. But my meeting with him was very different feeling. It felt like a friend. And I found in his presence questions coming up. I was asking, I can't remember them, by the way, but just questions that came up in conversations, and he met them. I felt met me with questions, you see, with his responses to them. And I grew very, very quickly to really like and look forward to meeting him, you know. And he supported this exhibition that we were organizing. He joined also. He was also painting. He put in some big charcoal drawings that I liked very much. And we kept on seeing each other. He would just show up, you know, without arrangement. He would show up, and we'd end up talking. So this grew very quickly, and I felt very comfortable. So within a short space of time, maybe about maybe 4 weeks, I found it was a Sunday. We were sitting together, 4 of us together, and we had another talk like that. And I felt very happy. I cannot say it was generally about the topic of spirituality and, you know, but as he was leaving, I remember asking him, "Michael, when you pray again, will you pray for me?" I asked him like this.
Yeah.
It just came out, actually. And he said, "Well, sure, but why not now?" He was like this. I said, "Okay." So I stood up. We're used to this type of meeting. People pray sometimes, although that hadn't happened for many years. You know. But I stood up, and he prayed, put his hand on, prayed, on my head and prayed or something. And at the end of this, I found spontaneously, I also asked for myself, you know, please help me, please guide me to something like this. And that was it. We had a hug, and he left. And I felt very happy, very, very happy. and tired. And shortly after this, him leaving, I went to bed. And I often talk about this because it was a real turning point for me from that moment.
So what changed in your life after that?
I woke up next morning, and it was like the dimmer switch of sensitivity was turned up or something. I was noticing just like the sunlight, coming through, like I was seeing it for the first time, or noticing it with that type of joy. There was a sort of a sweetness about it.
So you were more aware of...
I felt like tingly aware of...
Tingly aware.
Yeah,
Okay.
of just being...
Yeah.
Of a sense of happiness and lightness in my body, And I remember this distinctly, how the ray was sliding across the room, and just, I don't know what I was noticing, but just more feeling about it. And I felt very, very well, felt like going for a walk, which is not something I'd been doing for a while. I was always driving about. And went out, and it just opened up into a very magnified state of happiness, like this. It was very noticeable. And I didn't want this feeling or this day to end particularly. I just walked out in it. And this continued, went to bed. I didn't want to go to bed tonight. I was full of energy. And but eventually slept and woke up, and it hadn't changed, this feeling. And I think within a few days, a deep peace was felt inside, and that has just stayed. But many things changed. The way of seeing, and I felt I was completely being reoriented somewhere inside me. Sensitivity about so many things, the way the world was appearing, and how it felt to meet people. Something was different. I was not really analyzing it so much. It was just all feeling at that stage. Yes.
Were you surprised it was happening, or did it just feel like a natural process?
I don't feel surprised. I felt grateful and very, very happy, joyful. It felt completely right somehow, natural. But I felt very, very fortunate. I was like this. I was full of the joy of spring somehow.
So how different were you from the Mooji before this happened, in practical terms?
I don't know. I was never much of a thinker, much. But what was different was it felt like something had moved in. A sort of presence had moved in. And something very quickly in me felt to call this God, you see.
So it almost felt like an external presence?
No, I don't feel that it's external. It's a mix, because it was very, very much inside, sitting inside this frame. The feeling was like this. But I didn't feel like I was invaded or something, It just felt like something was turned up, like I was on full power or something. But it was distinct, and I knew it wasn't something that I did to feel this way, you see. It was just, I regarded it, maybe due to my upbringing and so on, like this was like grace, I'd use words like this without really knowing anything about what they really meant. It felt right, like it was like I was just good fortune or something. I felt very blessed. And I immediately began to relate to this presence, this feeling, this presence as God, This is how it felt for me.
Because I think you say in the chapter in your book that's biographical, that people realised something different had happened to you, and then they were quite surprised, not surprised, but they saw that you were a different person in one way. So it was
initially
obviously noticeable to people.
To the people who were in regular contact with me, most of them was expressing a sort of discomfort. I could pick it up,
So they found it uncomfortable.
They felt uncomfortable a little bit. Not everyone,
Yeah.
The friend who was with me from the very moment that this introduction to Michael came, she was very supportive and very present. But she's like this anyway. And but some friends who would come visit us to the house and so on. At first, they were really trying. It felt like they were trying to sink my my newfound feeling, you know, like questioning it, and you know, have you taken something?
People have suspicious minds,
Yeah,
don't they?
yeah, you know, and almost as though they felt threatened by it. I don't know why, because I wasn't preaching anything.
And you also said in your biography that there was some miracles started to occur around this time.
What I would call a miracle. I mean, some things out of the ordinary. And just how it felt inside, how it was noticed inside me. You know, like I saw that. I don't often talk about it so much, you know, but it felt like miracles for me.
Yeah.
In a way that if I try and talk, I don't know how it will sound to talk about it like this, but it was definitely played its part in my recognition that it was not my doing. I felt like something was being spring cleaned inside, and a deeper sensitivity and awareness about how totally related whatever happens here and how that affects what's happening around me. That was clear, you know. Unquestionably, it was clear for me.
And then you had this period, I think 6 years, where because before that you'd been doing, you
Yes.
were a street painter, then you were doing the stained glass, and then I think you removed yourself. Is that correct?
I was
And
teaching also.
You were teaching too.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was working as a teacher in a local college, no?
Yes.
Yes. And it wasn't immediate, you know, I continued teaching for a while. But it came with the teaching part of it. One time I'd gone back. I never really trained as a teacher, you see. How it came about was there was an exhibition, I had an exhibition, and the local college, the art department came. They took some students there. And the teacher enjoyed the exhibition and asked me, would you like to come and talk a little bit about your work and so on? And so it felt nice to do this. And I went to college and brought some slides and talked about the work and so on. And very much enjoyed. And they asked me again. And this went on maybe 4 or 5 times. And then he popped the question, you see, like, you know, would you like to do a bit of, you know,
Right,
part-time
yeah,
work? You know?
right, yeah.
And I said, wow, yes. There was not much to think about. And it started like that. It was very beautiful for a couple of years. And then somehow the head of the department, of my department, left. And I was encouraged to go for this job. It was not my heart's desire to do this, but somehow. And many people applied for it, and it was given to me. I didn't say that I deserved it, but it was offered to me because perhaps I was already working there, you know. And then after this, somehow it was a struggle for me because it required some administrative tasks, and I wasn't suited to that. And so one time, going back at the beginning of one term, and I was approached and I said, look, you know, you have to go, I think it was in Tunbridge Wells, to continue some aspects of the teaching, some training, 3 times a week and so on. And it just popped out and said, no, I'm not going to do this. And it was a surprise, you know.
Yeah.
And I was asked, no, but what are you saying? Please go and think about it. But as soon as I mentioned it, it's like my whole heart changed, and I knew it was complete, that I could not continue. But I had to work out that term, and that was a real painful experience, because it's like my heart had gone, and I'd really struggled. But it meant that at the end of that, I was finished. And since I was not a saver, you know, I didn't save money and think ahead or something.
Yeah.
So whatever little money I had was exhausted very quickly. And I was opened up to the wind, really, for a bit.
And I think you went to stay with your sister.
My sister, yes.
She looked after
My
you for a
sister
time,
offered me a room in her apartment.
And what happened to you during that time internally, and what was there a process going on?
Yes. Somehow I felt what could be called my life, and from the position of me living my life, making decisions, that was very much changing anyway. It was an easy change for me, because naturally, I don't know if it's my religious upbringing or something, this orientation towards just surrendering things felt very comfortable for me. So it was my way of just saying, okay, you know what is best, and you brought all these things into my heart, so you have me to sort it out. It seemed to work somehow.
Yeah. So it was a classic case of surrender, just saying,
Yes,
whatever happens is going to happen.
yes.
Did you feel that took courage, or was it just obviously that was
I
the...
felt I was being assisted anyway.
Yes.
In my feelings was changing to accommodate that kind of outlook. It wasn't difficult. I felt naturally to trust. It was a natural thing for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you were there 6 years or so in this, what I would call process. You would
Well,
letting go.
little fragments of memory about this
Yeah.
time come.
Yeah.
Even now, little bits pop up.
Yes.
But over that period, I cannot really. There's a sense I cannot really remember who I was in that time. But there was no real schedule in my life when I finished teaching.
Yeah.
So I was completely opened up to just how a day might unfold, you see.
Yes.
There was not many desires, sort of like pulling here and there. But there was a very strong inner sense that to throw everything into this fire somehow.
Yeah.
It felt very exciting, not scary at all. I felt throw everything in. Somehow I felt like I just walked out on my life, and it wasn't difficult. Just threw everything into this experience. I say, okay, whatever,
There's a quote from you in the book about that time you felt you were seated in the lap of God.
Yes, yes,
And that's a wonderful way of describing it.
yes. In some way, still this feeling is there.
I'm sure it is, yeah.
Yes, yes.
And then, just to follow the story chronologically, you then in 1993 you travelled to India.
Yes, I did. Yes.
And what was your motivation for going there?
Well, what had happened in that until I was quite old compared to many people, I was not so much reading. I only read like 2 books.
Really?
Yes. One was The Pearl by John Steinbeck, because we had to perform it at school. I mean, of my own volition, I'm talking about, not choosing to read it.
Yeah.
And the second one was, I found in a library one day, I don't know how this came about, there was a big book, 88 short stories by Guy de Maupassant. I don't know where this came from, but I read a bit and I was fascinated by the strangeness of these stories, and I read this book. But I hadn't read anything. I was not drawn to reading. If you found me with a book, it's because it had pictures in it. I like pictures. But words, I was not so much, accustomed to looking into words deeply and so on. Yeah. And so, where are we on this
We're
point?
talking about the reason you went to India.
So, okay. And then there arose in this new time, this new period in my life, this a desire to learn more. I wanted something said, I wanted to find out more about this. When I could meet Michael occasionally, I would just empty out my questions and whatever was coming up in front of him, and he would pacify my mind somehow. But then there arose some curiosity. I wanted to learn something more, and I went into one bookshop, spiritual Christian bookshop actually, near my town, and I went in. And I remember it was a very powerful experience for me. It was as though I entered this space and it was very noisy for my mind. It was like shh, like this.
So all the words from the books were cascading on you.
You're
somehow.
saying it. It was just like this.
Yeah.
It was like all these words were screaming inside my head, and I just came out. And I did not go into another shop like this for about 6 years.
Yeah.
No, 6 years. I don't know what 6 years. For a long time, I didn't go again. But then what happened was, in our town, there was just a rising up of this new wave of young Muslims were coming into town, and they were kind of giving away. They give away a lot of books, outside the tube station and so on. And I was on fire for looking at anything that felt like more of this, you see. So a lot of fears came, though.
The fear came up. Yeah?
Fear came up very strongly. That somehow I was drawn, some curiosity, some urge to look at what they were displaying, but there's a feeling, I don't know if maybe the whole religious thing or something, that I was abandoning Christ or something, I don't know, but there was an attraction for this. So I found a book from one of them, said Christ in Islam or something, and because of the Christ, okay, I went for it a bit.
Yeah.
And then then the fear fell away as I saw that the actuality of reading it, there was nothing fearful about it. And then somehow someone gave me a book of Paramahamsa Yogananda, a little thing, and I read some of this. And then one day I was in the center of London and I came across Watkins' bookshop.
I know, yeah.
And I went into this shop. I was a bit hesitantly, after the memory of the first experience. You see. But I went into this shop and then I went down to this Indians. I've always had an attraction for India. I don't know why. And I went for the smallest book I could find because I like this. And I found a book by Sri Ramana Maharshi. I saw the picture first and I really liked it. But when I opened it, it was a book on self-inquiry, small thing. And when I started to try and read it, it completely blew me away. It was so noisy for me because it's like I had to use my mind in a way. It felt very, very clever or something. And so I felt maybe someone put the wrong inside on the cover or something because they didn't tally up with this beautiful, peaceful face.
Yeah.
So it wasn't speaking to me. In this way, I put it back and I found a book of Sri Ramakrishna. And it was, I flicked through some pages and I felt something about this book. And I bought, this was one of the first books I bought, The Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna.
Right.
And this became my second Bible in a way. I was reading this, I was heating it actually. I didn't want it to finish, this reading. It was so full. I found that in the words of Ramakrishna was satisfying something deep inside. And so when I went to India in 1993, the intention was just to go to Dakshineswar and to visit the place where he lived, although he was not there anymore, seen physically. So that was what drew me to India.
And you met some disciples out there that were followers of Papaji.
Yes.
And you ended up going to visit Papaji out there.
I ended up not going to Calcutta at all, where Ramakrishna. I ended up to meet Papaji, who I knew nothing about. I knew nothing about sages and gurus, nothing like this.
Yeah.
But somehow I felt very blessed to have been brought to him. I felt like I was brought to him. Yes.
And he said something to you, didn't he, that gave you a bit of a jolt?
A very big jolt.
What did he say to you?
I'd sat in satsang for some months and listened and benefited from everybody's question. And then it came one time I felt I wanted to put myself in front of him. So I really spent a whole evening trying to construct a letter to introduce myself and all of this. And then the time came and he read it. And in front of everyone, he calls you up. And I went up shivering, And
so when you say shivering, you were...
at first I was shivering more when I was sitting waiting to see if he was going to pick up my letter, actually.
Yeah, so you were kind of a little nervous.
Very nervous.
Yeah.
And then he called. And I got up and it was like my knees turned to water or something, I don't know. But something fell away, because it was like it's like going up to the butcher's block or something. Because I'd watched other people go up. But he read my letter.
Yeah.
And as he was reading it, Babaji sometimes can just destroy you through even a joke or something. He would kind of make fun of you or something. But he started to talk, and then I found that a lot of resistance was coming up, fears, anger started coming up. That was surprising for me. And it was so loud, it became a sort of ring in my ears. And I literally could not hear him, what he was speaking. I could watch his mouth moving like... Inside the noise was so loud. And but one thing filtered through, and it was that he said, if you wish to discover the truth fully, you must vanish, you must disappear altogether. That did something. Completely shuffled me up completely. I don't know. I felt so angry and disrespected. All of this stuff came up.
So you felt he hadn't seen you as such?
No, it wasn't this. It was complete. I don't know what it is. It was not anything that was expected. It was just feeling like I'd asked him to sort of put a bit of plaster on my hand, and he stuck something into my solar plexus or something like this instead, you know. And everything came up this. I tried to look really calm outwardly, but I was a complete wreck inside. Something came up that loud. And then after this, I wanted just to go home to get away from him. And I felt in my heart it was time to leave this place. This was my cue to get out of Lucknow and move on. And so I went home and furiously started packing to leave. But I took a break and went for a walk just to take some air. And shortly after sitting under a tree cooling off, I felt okay now. I was still, blazing somehow with this kind of strange feelings. And then I went to go home, to walk back and to continue the packing. And after moving on for about maybe 20 meters, it was like this huge cloud of anger and frustration and shame just vanished. That vanished. And in this moment, I could not find myself. I could see my body, I could see my body was there, but that's not what I was looking for. I could not find a reference that I could hang something about who I am onto. There was just this infinite expanse. Up until this time meeting Papaji, my life was full just of bliss and joy. It's there now also, but that was on the front page of my being, so to speak, And I was feeling hints, little blasts of this spaciousness. But in that moment, it was like I was not there. I as me or something. It was really like this. And for a few seconds, there was a kind of panic. And then that just blew away also. There was only the space that was there. And then a great love for Papaji arose in that space for me. And in that moment I realized, up until then, I did not love him. It was just like this. Then I realized that I was holding back. Everything went. And I ran to his house like a child. I wanted just to run to his house. I don't think my feet felt like it was touching the ground or something.
And what did you say when you saw him in the house?
I didn't get there. I got there and there were people waiting to go into his house, and I don't remember what else happened. I went home and I knew I was not going to leave. I stayed on, in fact.
You stayed on in Lucknow?
Yes, I stayed on in Lucknow.
Yeah.
And was in love with him, in love with being there. And I don't know how to describe these things.
And then what finally did take you away from India was you had the tragedy with your son. He died.
Yes. And I left Lucknow, went to Ramana Ashram and spent a few months there.
Right.
And came back to Lucknow to be with Papaji. And then I got some news that my eldest son had passed away suddenly. So I came back to London very quickly.
How was that when you heard that news?
There was a sort of reflex. In a flash, it was like I was skinless, but just for a few seconds.
Yeah.
And then that also went.
Yeah.
It's like this. Like a reaction from the past or something happened, and then somehow it was all okay. It was all like space again. But then everything else moved into action to do what was needed to be done. I felt very strongly assisted in everything that unfolded, after this. So I came back to London and buried my son and reassured my other two children. And it was like this. There was not a sense of regret.
No, I understand what you're saying.
I have to say,
Yeah.
And sometimes people are a bit shocked by that, but I have to be honest about it.
Yeah.
I felt it was okay. Not like he died too young. I didn't have these sentiments or feelings. I felt it is just like this. It's how it's meant to be.
Mm. And then you were in England.
I stayed on in England, yes.
And what happened next?
Well, somehow the sense of any kind of control or motivation arising from any projection or intention had weakened so much. Just whatever was going on, it was going on. And I found I started to work in the market selling incense.
Right.
I started to do this for some time. That felt okay to do this, and I enjoyed it also. And then in 1997, an opportunity, someone invited me to come to India and paid my fare. I had no money, so I went there. And I had a chance to be with Papaji again. Yes. So I left. I was with him another few months, and left only a month before he left his body. And again, that event, if you want to say, had the same effect like my son. It is like, I don't feel Papaji has gone anywhere. What is felt as Papaji inside me.
Yes.
Yes.
And so then you started to teach or to give talks. How did your new work?
There was no
evolve?
intention about this. I continued working on the street, selling incense and like this. And then somehow in the market, Electric Avenue in Brixton, I started to meet people very casually who would come to the shop. It was not just incense now. I started off walking with a bag, on a bell, selling incense in the market, and I loved this freedom. But they came at one Christmas, and the police was moving everybody off the street who were selling things like myself, So I went to one shop and I asked one shopkeeper, "You mind if I stand outside of your shop and sell these things?" And he said, "Well, if you don't get in the way, then it's okay for me." But that effectively meant that the police couldn't move me from there. And then somehow he got talking with me, this man, and he felt, if you want to, you can stay. I don't mind. And then it somehow I brought a table and started to put more incense out and a stool and started sitting there. And more products came, things from India, started selling things like this. So I started to meet people in this way. They would come. I used to have this thing called Thought for the Day. Thought for the day.
Yeah.
It was writing down all these things that I felt touched by, these words and things I'd heard and aphorisms from different masters. Just write them down. And then I'd cut them out. And I'd get some drinking straws from McDonald's. I shouldn't be saying this. And cutting them up into little bits and then rolling these papers, putting them inside. And I had a bag full of these, hundreds I'd make. And then people would come and ask, if they buy some, I say, "Would you like a thought for the day?" They put their hand and take something.
Right, yeah.
And it just took off. People loved it, you see.
Yeah.
And wherever I went, I always carried it. Somebody, "Please, can I have a..." They would go and take 4 or 5 sometimes or whatever.
Yeah.
Like this. You see, it started like that. So then somehow people started to come and talk. And then a few that really touched me deeply, I would invite and say, "Let's have a cup of tea and talk about this." And they in turn maybe introduce someone and say, "I'd like a friend to meet you." And it was just like this, very soft.
I think, just from what I picked up from your book, you encourage something called self-inquiry now. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what is self-inquiry?
In the simplest way, the self-inquiry is like looking into a mirror to see what you have been overlooking, the simplicity of the being that we are, which somehow gets eclipsed by our conditioning and our fascination for objects or intentions and so on. And inquiry helps to challenge this notion of ourself and to dispel what is not true. And in that, dispelling what is not true, what is unquestionably true, is revealed in that
Yes,
seeing.
yes, yeah.
And it's funny because, you know, it started off, I explained to you, with Ramana Maharshi's book on self-inquiry, and how much of repulsed I was by this. And I feel some power brought this inside. I say it's Bhagwan, you know. Some people are not used to this type of language, but for me, I have to say that it was revealed inside. Because I found that it was the most unsparing tool at blowing the cover on what is not true and exposing what is really untrue. And so it is one of the ways in which my interactions with people take place in this way. But in other ways too, we speak about also those whose inclination or temperament is more towards devotion or surrender, you know. I don't have, like I say, I'm not a one-trick pony. I don't have a, this is my thing, you know. I think any way that people think, there's a way into that discovery. So self-inquiry is one way in which we can come to clarity as to what it is that we are in truth, you know. It's one way, a very effective way, but more towards people whose temperament is more philosophical or
Stronger in the mind.
you know.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Because it seems to me, I guess we say you found your freedom. I'm not trying to categorise you. I'm just trying to use a word to understand. You found your freedom. In a way, it wasn't so much a process. Something just happened.
Yes.
When you were talking with, I forget the guy's name.
Yes, Michael.
Michael,
Yes.
that's right. When you were talking with Michael.
Yes.
And it happened in a fairly simple way, but
Yes.
from also what you've suggested to me, you have a relatively simple mind, not a complex mind. And of course,
Yes.
so many of us in the West have quite complicated minds.
Yes.
And you feel this process of self-inquiry can help people to find their freedom?
It clearly has and continues to do this. Because I had no intention. If you were to ask me, you know, or to say, you know, in a few years or so, you will develop somehow in a way of speaking, it would just seem completely ridiculous for me. I felt somehow the inquiry made it easy for people who struggled with trust or with feelings of emotions or surrender, or like where this aspect of human expression was not comfortable for them. The inquiry became a way, their way into the same truth, the same recognition. So, because one thing I remember about this whole feeling for me is a sort of prayer I have in my heart, which was that if I'm going to be free from the hypnosis of my own conditioning, I don't want to be free just for me. It's never felt like this for me. It's like as many as can come through this door, let it happen like this.
Yeah.
I felt why not? So perhaps inquiry is for also there for people who are not necessarily drawn to religion or to, you know, faith or trust or all of this, and it's perfectly fine.
Yeah. You know, something that's always at the back of my mind is that because there's such an interconnectedness between all of us,
Yes.
can one person, I wonder, be completely free when the rest of us are not free, as we're all essentially one cosmos in a way?
Yes, yes.
And I wonder, do you sometimes feel in yourself I don't want to mean to say people are holding you back, I don't mean it that way, but do you sometimes feel there's more of a way to go somehow, which can only happen when we all are open to this process?
I don't know if it's down to us to be open. Something must be already moving there. I don't feel that there's really an us in the way that we imagine to initiate a move towards anything. I feel it's like it's like the whole of consciousness is moving.
Yes.
So it takes out this feeling of a blame that people are responsible for what you're drawn to, what you're attracted to, or what you're repulsed by. So there's something that is easy about this. And also because I know deep within my own being that we are this already. You see?
No, I've heard this so many times that I understand what you're
Yes.
saying. Yeah.
So that, and I'm happy to remind those who I meet, that it's not that you need to be clever or creative or come from a particular background to qualify for something. We are this already, and it's only somehow that the recognition of this has to take place. You are this. It's not enough to just say this, of course. It might sound nice to many people. It might help them to have experiences and so on. But there has to be a complete recognition. Maybe the recognition of seeing what is not true, what is not you. It can happen in an instant. It can be a slow cook. I don't know. It happens in a different way, this recognition. It's not that the self or the reality happens, but the recognition of it somehow can be said to be a kind of play, like a kind of event, that something falls away from a kind of a peeling away of, like a cataract of illusory identification or something.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. It's a slow cook, as you put it, for some people. For other people, something can happen quite quickly.
But even if it happens quickly, there's a slow cook aspect of it that continues.
There's integration.
It seems paradoxical, even, but there is a sort of maturity that continues to happen.
Yeah.
But against a background of unchanging awareness at the same time.
And was that? I know you don't remember the details, but what was happening for you the 6 years when you were kind of living with your sister? You felt there was the slow cook was going on in the background.
Yes. Maybe slow burning away of the noise of identity or something. I felt it anyone who somehow are in the taste of this self-experiencing recognize that something is dissolving by itself, and there's a sense of an eagerness to be out of the way mentally with it. I think if you're hammering at trying to believe something, it doesn't really work. It's a whole move where you find yourself somehow, just like if you fall in love, no one has to remind you to remember your beloved or something. You see?
It's grace like, again, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the word grace in this way. That's something you feel compelled, to complete something. Sometimes people say, yes, but how can I be sure if I said, oh, it's such nonsense, When you're in love, you say, how can I be sure if this is the right person? No, you don't do this. Something just goes. You go for it. So perhaps we are so accustomed to respecting our thinking, or maybe it's not even this. Maybe it's just really, it's not the time to pour yourself out. It can play whatever way, the way the behavior of consciousness dances in each form, I don't feel that I'm here to persuade or to convince anybody. But they come up in front and we see what happens.
And you enjoy that? You enjoy that?
Well, one cannot but enjoy, because it's liberating. It's when I don't really feel I'm pouring effort for this. It's a joy to see imagined obstacles evaporate in that clear seeing. Yes, there is a joy about it.
Yeah.
To see that, to feel that lightness return.
How do you feel with the way humanity is going at the moment? All these dramas that are happening with the banks and the ecology and things. Is that?
If I'm to be honest, I don't even notice it.
You don't notice it, yeah.
It's not that I stick my head in the sand or something. Perhaps all these things have to happen. Perhaps in a bigger way, it will compel a deeper opportunity for seeing may come out of it. it might expose how much we depend on outer circumstances for a sense of fulfillment that it cannot satisfy. I don't know. I'm not waiting for anything to come out of it, in fact. Things like this happen thousands of times in the universe.
I think you're right there.
And I don't want to make a big deal, 2012 or 14, I don't know what the big thing is, where it's big shift of... I don't really go for this. Wait for something like this, no. We are what we are even now. And it doesn't have to be frilly, and it can be, but it's not a condition or requirement or something. Sometimes these type of thoughts can become a kind of avoidance, you see.
Well, it gives us a focus for something to think on the external, to try and fix and get right. And
it's just a habit.
And then that can always be a distraction from the internal.
Yes. But if that happens also, it is the play of consciousness, what to do about it.
Yeah.
I'm not apart from consciousness to do anything about this.
So you have your book, Before I Am.
Yes.
How does it feel to have a book out now?
I feel that happy that people enjoy or feel something speaks to them from this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Mooji, I'm going to thank you very much for coming along and talking to us here at Conscious TV. And thank you everyone for watching. And I hope we see you again soon. Goodbye.